Welcome to the MMHP in the 989. Channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history from the city by the bay. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
We're back with part 3 with Dennis Loren. 3 straight weeks here on the New Year's with Dennis Loren, the graphic artist master himself, and his backstory. We're going to kick off today, wrapping up where we left off, part 2 with Brian Wilson and Dennis's personal dealing with Brian Wilson, as well as his inner works with the Beach Boys themselves. And we're going to go straight on through into graphic artist work that he's done and correlated with out in San Francisco, and the reasoning behind some of the Avalon Ballroom and the Fillmore and the lettering, and how it all came to be, and how he's been asked to mimic some of it over the years as well. Straight into Moonalice, which is a recent band made up of all-stars out in San Francisco that Dennis regularly does artwork for. And catch the post part of the show too, little tidbits on Moonalice and some of great little notes that we've had pre-show and post-show pop up on there as usual. Thank you all for tuning in for 3 weeks. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you, Dennis Loren, and enjoy part 3.
So, Brian is an interesting guy. I mean, I have my picture taken with him and he's smiling.
Perfect.
But when you're actually in the room with him and talking, it's like Mark and I sometimes would go to rehearsals. They had these real soundstage rehearsal areas in LA, and we would go down, and especially to show, whatever we were working on, get approval for the next level, and we would go in and Brian, I mean, Mark goes to Brian's house almost every day, if nothing else but to take his son to karate,
Wow.
That kind of thing. And he's more than a graphic artist, but I mean, it's like with Brian's wife, Mark and I went to this restaurant that was owned by Herb Albert, and it's up in the Hollywood Hills somewhere. And toward the end of the meal, I'm reaching for my wallet, and his wife said to me, "Put it away, Dennis. You can't afford it." But this is funny because they pay me more than just about any client when I've worked for them. And I remember one time Mark picked me up from the airport, and the first thing he did was hand me $4,000, advance for whatever I was going to do.
Wonderful.
So, did you see the movie Love and Mercy, the film about Brian? I think that was the title of it.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that one on a plane somewhere, but I haven't seen this latest one. There's another one.
Really?
The Something Road. There was an ad for it in the web.
There's something just either it's coming out or it just came out.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I don't know if it's documentary or a docudrama, but I think that one's pretty good. My impression is I've never really had a lengthy conversation with him. Not that I haven't tried, because I'm generally a talkative person, and he just strikes me as shy, and within that shyness, kind of spaced.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's because of the medication, or I don't know what side effects those things have,
Right.
He's still writing. He's still, they did the whole Beach Boys 50th anniversary, and it's just about to roll around 60th.
Yeah.
Yeah. The songs that he put together for that Beach Boys comeback album, which was really mostly Brian, I thought were really good.
Yeah.
A lot of people were expecting it to be Surfing USA again. That's really not what he's into.
Right.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I like that quite a bit. But I don't know, there seems to be that thing with Mike Love that they just, I don't think the Beach Boys are going to be together again.
I don't think so either, because when we were wrapping up the Smile album cover, we had to make a change because Mike Love threatened that he wrote part of Good Vibrations. And I asked Brian, well, what did he write? Or what did, he said, well, he might have suggested I'm getting excitations or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it wasn't much.
It wasn't much. It was like a line.
Yeah.
And he was just trying to stop Brian.
Yeah.
Because Brian was having a successful solo career.
Mike Love just seems like a very disagreeable person.
Yeah, I've never met him, but I don't like him just because the way he treats Brian.
I'm
they're
the same
cousins.
way.
They're cousins.
Oh yeah.
Why would any?
And they were very close when they were young. Apparently.
Yeah, they were.
It's funny how when that 50th anniversary rolled around, he agreed to do the tour because he knew you could capitalize on the 50th anniversary.
Right.
I mean, people were filling the backstory and left and right for him.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we could do it. Well, they're going to limit the dates we're doing. We're going to limit the production we put out. Yeah. And as soon as we're done, I already got my tour booked as the Beach Boys after you're out of the band.
Yeah.
Talk about a shitty situation.
Yeah, really.
They could have carried that on for a year.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Well, maybe Brian was just as well glad because, with both of his brothers dead, I'm not sure how meaningful it was to him.
Right.
Yeah,
I think he was just
Carl
happy to partake.
Kind of been a good buffer between Brian and Mike Love.
Yeah.
I think Carl was kind of running the Beach Boys until he passed away.
Yeah, he kind of was. Yeah.
Doesn't Al Jardine tour with Brian?
Yeah, actually, right now Brian has more Beach Boys than Mike Love does because he's got Bruce Johnston and Mike Love
and the guitar player,
and then another Wonderments type of
array
of guys.
Is it Marks, the guitar player? Or
David Marks. I don't know if he's with them now. He was involved in the 50th anniversary, though.
Yeah, I think another guy that plays with Mike is Jeff Foskett, who was in Brian's band. Mark called me and said, Foskett went over to the dark side.
You know how many bands do that, though? I mean, you got Pink Floyd and Roger Waters. Yeah. They have interchangeable, right? The same Fleetwood Mac solo stuff.
Yeah.
The same drummers with Lindsay, goes out with Stevie Nicks, goes out. I mean, it's the same bands, and then the backing band comes out of all that. It's funny how that works.
Yeah, it's funny about a band, just trying to make a career in music. And then there's these behind the scenes guys that never get famous,
right. That they're the glue.
But they're there all over.
They've glued somehow it all together for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because in the Wonderments, there's this guy Darian Sahananja. He's an Indian ethnically, and although I think he was born in L.A., he studied with the Vibes player, the xylophone guy who played on Brian's. On Pet Sounds and a lot of those records. Because he'd use the Wrecking Crew, and whoever that was that played that was where Darian learned to do it. So in a way, his Wonderments backing band is kind of the Wrecking Crew too.
Yeah.
And again, they have albums on their own, but. I doubt in 100 years anybody will remember them.
Yeah, well, but they played on so many hits.
They played on so many.
Oh my gosh! All Phil Spector stuff, and just numerous hit songs. Mamas and the Papas.
I met when I was doing the commemorative stuff for the Whiskey A Go Go's 30th anniversary. I was there, and a guy named Billy Hinchy was booking the bands from Dino, Dizzy, and Billy.
Yes.
And Billy Hinchy also has associations with the Beach Boys. He may be in one of these Mike Love lineups.
Well, he was with them, I think, in the 70s, wasn't he? In the early 70s period, Billy Hinchy was a regular in the Beach Boys.
And anyway, at the Whiskey, he introduces me to Desi Jr., and I'm not sure why he was there. Maybe he was just hanging out with Billy, but he introduced me to him, and he goes, and I asked him what he did, what he was doing, and Billy made all the answers. Every time I asked him a question, Billy would do the answer. And he says he's busy inheriting. Because every time they play, Desi and Lucy and, anything that they were involved in, they owned, They had their own production. In fact, I think they were the production company for Dragnet and a bunch of other TV shows.
Yeah, Desi Lou.
Desi Lou, yeah,
yes.
right. So, Desi, that's his job, inheriting. He just coordinates. It's whatever money's coming in from his parents. But, Billy is an interesting guy, too, because there was a band briefly called In Bloom that was, I think, Carl's son, Dennis Wilson's son on drums, and another guy who was a bass player. They were power trio. They actually hung out at my apartment in LA.
Wow.
Because they were doing one of the opening acts when they were doing this 35th anniversary for the whiskey. And I'm sure it was Billy that got him on the bill because, they were opening up for like Three Dog Night or something, They all could have been their grandparents, But, I've been fortunate because, it's just the luck of the draw. The fact that I know Mark that would allow me to, meet Brian and work on stuff for him.
I was just looking, Blondie Chaplin might be the one we were thinking of for Brian's career.
Oh, yeah.
He's been out with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not an original Beach Boy, but Sail on Sailor, and he was with the Stones for a while, too.
Well, the Blondie I've seen with the Brian Wilson Band, and with Al Jardine, and another guy, David Marks, who was... He's on the first 4 albums because Al Jardine went to college.
Right.
Yeah, and I think Al Jardine might have went to Ferris State.
Is that right?
I think so.
I read an interview in a recent Mojo, and I think you're right.
Yeah, he went to dental school.
Is that in Grand Rapids?
Well,
Ferris.
Big Rapids.
Big Rapids.
Big
Yes.
Rapids. Okay.
Right.
I just read that. I just found out reading an article on Mojo a couple months ago that Harvey Mandel was born in Detroit.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
I didn't either.
No.
So there's another one
Right.
for your...
Yes.
Wow.
I figure if you're born here or done time here, you can count Michigan.
Well, sure. You're born here. You're a Michigan artist. That's our claim to fame for Bill Haley.
Yeah, right.
He only lived here, for until he was 6 or so, but, he was born in Michigan.
Yeah, that's right.
So tell me a little bit how the recent years, got up to the Moonalice. I guess that's how kind of where we're heading right now.
Oh, right.
That's where you're at right now, kind of doing Moonalice exclusively.
Yeah. I mean, I do CD and LP packages for Freddie's label called Steady Boy Records. He's in Austin, Texas, and he played with Roky, but he has an amazing. He's one of those guys.
Yeah.
He's played with everybody from Carole King to Willie Nelson, but for years he was on the road drumming for Jerry Jeff Walker.
Oh.
And so now it's funny how all of this turns around. I was coming back from Turkey, and I stayed in New York for a couple of days, and I went to the Night Owl Cafe, and one of the bands I saw was called the Lost Sea Dreamers. But eventually they signed a record deal and they changed the name to Circus Maximus. And they were on Vanguard for 2 albums, and Jerry Jeff Walker was one of the members of that band. In fact, on one of those 2 albums, there may be an early version of Bojangles.
What was the sound? Did they have kind of a country?
Not at all. I think they were probably trying to be more folk rock into psychedelia.
Oh, okay.
So that Vanguard was the Frost too, which was
I was saying, their album probably got lost in the shuffle, just like the Frost did.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I always thought of Elektra and Vanguard as very similar labels, but Vanguard I think, tried harder. They got the Doors and Love and.
We mean Electra.
You mean Electric?
Yeah, Electra Records.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why. I mean, they both those labels were folk labels that turned into rock labels, but also they would dabble in jazz and classical. With None Such Records and in Electra's case, but. Yeah, I'm sure. Like Electra came and signed the MC5 and the Stooges, and then Vanguard was right on their ass and got Third Power and Frost.
Yeah. Yep.
They hung out at the Grandy a couple of weekends and checked out all the opening acts.
Yeah.
There was another band they were interested in called All the Lonely People, and there's an unreleased All the Lonely People album, I think, in their vaults. And I know the drummer, and he's retired to Florida, I think, now.
That's got to be frustrating, to have an album somewhere in the can and it's not released.
That was like Stoney and the Jagged Edge. They were a very popular Grandy band, and in that album, it took 40 years to come out,
right,
or more. I mean, let's say,
go ahead.
The producer told them that it was burned up in a fire. Many years later, after this guy died, his brother had taken over his stuff, and my friend Alex Palau, who does a lot of reissues for Ace and Big Beat Records in England and Rhino and different labels, he's sort of a rock and roll detective. He tracks down old tapes and things and does a lot of reissues, and sometimes in the case of some bands, it's not a reissue. It's the first time it was ever out.
A non-issue.
Yeah. And so he's going through stuff and going to do an A-Square compilation. And he comes across this tape box, and it's the Lost Stoney and the Jagged Edge album. So, and that was one of the bands he liked on these miscellaneous compilations that he was working on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that at least Stoney was alive to see it happen.
Yeah, he's the only surviving member.
Yeah, all three of the other members were passed away, but Stoney's such a nice guy. I and see, they were equally as popular as the MC5 and the Stooges and the Frost and you name it, Amboy Dukes. They just were the one that got away.
Yeah, they were real big at the Mump.
Yeah.
Which was the big teen club in the Northland Shopping Center.
And there are bands like that in every local scene. There's always, well, why didn't they get a record deal?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of one of the things I like about the Michigan Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame is there are some of those regional bands that maybe put out a 45 or two, but they were big stars, in their scene.
For their scene,
yeah. Exactly. And they all had a story to tell. And, some of them, like Question Mark and the Mysterians, just had the right song and the right breaks and became famous. But even Question Mark and the Mysterians, they have a lost album. Apparently, according to Bobby, they recorded what they thought was maybe an album's worth of material on Ray Charles' Tangerine Records out in California. There was one single released, and then nobody seems to know what happened to the tapes. So that might be one for the Alex. Record, the record detective to dig that one out.
I think that's interesting because I thought also they were briefly with Capitol. I thought with Capitol.
Yeah, but just one single, though.
Oh, they never did even record remotely an album.
No, and then there was the big scandal that may have spiked the Capitol deal.
Oh.
That Question Mark was arrested on a glue sniffing charge. It hurt the band's image big time.
In those days, I'm certain it would have.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was detrimental because, those guys are really good.
Yeah.
And they kind of reminded me of the Seeds a little bit. If you listen to the
Yeah.
Seeds records and then listen to Question Mark and the Mysterians, they very similar kind of that punky garage
Yeah.
thing going on. They were both really good bands. And the Mysterians still are a really good band.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I like some of these bands that are, maybe they've only got one or two original members, but they're able to still pull it off with the right young musicians, and I think they have every right to, keep it going as long as they can.
Yeah, in the case of Mysterians, actually, they can put 5 guys on the stage
Yeah.
that all played with the band in the 1960s.
Yeah, right.
As far as I know, that's probably the only 60s band out there that can really do that.
Sure.
So they're pretty amazing in that sense.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you, we were heading towards Moonalice.
Oh, yeah, right. Moonalice started in about 2009. Now, they're made up of several band members, but the guy that got the ball rolling was Roger McNamee, and he was in a band called the Flying Other Brothers, amongst other bands. But he had my friend Chris Shaw do a poster for every Flying Other Brothers gig. So when he put together the original lineup, which is slightly different, it involved his wife as the lead singer and a guy named Jamie Sanchez on the drums, who was a Flying Other Brother. And then eventually Ann got tired of the road, because this is a band that tours a lot. At least up until the COVID thing. And so Anne dropped out, and she wanted to continue writing songs, but also work on a musical, sort of like a SiliconValley.com musical called Love Bites, which was called BYTES,
Computer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she did that. I don't know what happened to Jamie, but Jamie was replaced with John Molo from Bruce Hornsby and the Range.
And Phil Lesh. Yep.
Yeah.
He still does play with Phil quite a bit.
Yeah. In fact, a lot of them do.
Barry
Some of
Sluss.
these are, Barry Sluss, yeah. Yeah, they're all kind of like interchangeable, and I think sometimes they're the Dave Nelson band, and sometimes they're the New Riders of the Purple Sage,
Right.
And so you have Barry Sluss on the lead guitar, and Roger plays the rhythm guitar. Although he's getting really good. He occasionally will take a lead lick. He also can play the bass, which will allow Pete Sears, the bass player, to play keyboards. And basically, Roger and Pete do the singing. So there's Pete Sears, Roger, there's John Molo, and Barry Sluss, but they've recently added 5 new members. And the oldest one being Lester Chambers from the Chambers Brothers. So they have Lester and his son Dylan on vocals, and I guess Lester sometimes plays the harmonica. And they have also added a trio of sisters called the T Sisters. I think their last name is pronounced Teachin, but they just go by T Sisters because it's one of those names that's probably mispronounced a lot based on the spelling. And they're also songwriters and have a great vocal thing going on.
Well, the sibling harmony.
Yeah,
you can't beat that.
Yeah, and so they had recorded a brand new album in 2020, and they were going to take it on the road, but the COVID thing hit. And they've trickled out some tracks that they made videos for. you can go on and Google Woo Woo or Moonalice Woo Woo, which is one of the T-Sisters songs.
Okay.
And it's a pretty cool song, I think. Or you can watch them, do Time Has Come Today live somewhere.
They do every gig live on Facebook.
Yeah, they do.
Their feed it's like every time Moonalice comes on, every Instagram, Facebook,
Everything
immediately
lights up.
notifies you that Moonalice is now live, and it's every show they do that.
Yeah, they've got obsessed with like the Deadheads. Roger, I think is he's such a deadhead himself that it wouldn't surprise me. You know.
Yep.
And like you say, half of them play with Phil Lesh.
Yeah. Right. So how did you become the art guy to do all their posters?
Well, I don't do all of them. There are actually 20 of us. And what happened was, when they first formed, Chris Shaw and his wife Alexandra were doing them. Because even they were touring too much for just even Chris to do every one. Then David Singer had a difficult operation. He was one of the more famous Fillmore artists. He probably did more Fillmore posters than anybody, and I think he did like 66 different Fillmore posters. Anyway, he was well known, and one of his more famous posters was the Grateful Dead with Miles Davis.
Okay.
That's how eclectic it was in those days.
Yep.
And so anyway, to make a long story short, Roger and the band, I think, helped him financially. He had a serious operation, and then so when he was recovered, he started doing Moonalice posters. Then they started really touring heavily, and it got to be too much for David, Alex, and Chris. So they called four more of us. Stanley Mouse was one of them, and I was one of them, and I think the Firehouse guys.
Mm-hmm.
Slowly over the years, it's built up to about 24 of us. Wes Wilson, Ron Donovan, and Dave Hunter have since passed away, so now they've even brought in some younger people. But they do it on kind of a rotation, Yeah. So when I see somebody like Carolyn, she'll post on Facebook her latest design, and I know that Darren Brenner will be next, and then they'll be calling me.
Mm-hmm.
Except I have this special status because I'm the go-to guy if they pencil in an extra gig,
yes.
while they're on tour.
Right.
Well,
my favorite of your Moonalice posters is definitely the Alma Spreckles poster.
Oh, you like it?
Oh, well, I love it because of the backstory. I mean, it is such a great backstory, and it's a term, sugar baby
daddy,
or sugar daddy
yeah.
that everybody has heard but doesn't know the story behind it.
That's right.
Could you share that one with us here before we sign off?
Yeah, there's a Union Square is this place in downtown, just surrounded on all four sides by all the big department stores, and Macy's over here and such over there, and in the summertime they have free concerts, and Moonalice gets a couple of them a year of those slots, and Alexandra called me and said, you want to do... She's so polite. She always asks me, do you want to do it? And I say, of course, And so she said the concert was going to be at Union Square. And I said, okay. So I started to do a little research. I noticed there was a big pole with a statue there, and the model for the statue was this woman called well, I don't know what her last name was originally, but her name was Alma Spreckles, and the sculpture was funded by this guy Spreckles, who was sort of the his family was very wealthy because they made sugar, and so he was a bit older, and she was a model for an artist. That's there was a little scandal involved, and in the press, this is where they first used the term sugar daddy. And she was his sugar daddy. Of course, she became a patron of the arts and involved in all kinds of things. And I put both the statue, and then I put the statue one way, and then the other side of the statue the other way. And then in the middle, I found a picture of her back in the 20s or something.
It might have even been earlier than that. It almost looked like it was turn of the century.
Yeah, it could have been Victorian era. Right. And so, I try to do something with all of the posters that ties in with the theme. And not always, but sometimes there's just something like... I'm not one to be overt, when they do like 420, but I did do a poster for them when they were trying to get pot, what do they call it, legalized in California, and I just found out some facts. They had legalized it in Colorado, and then I just did a big pot leaf with Imagine, and then all these things that were proven to be true, and also how in Colorado the taxes on the legalized pot funded the whole educational system. So, every once in a while they'll do something political, and in the case of the COVID thing, they backed a poster, and I put an Asian young woman, and because I kept hearing about a lot of Asian bashing when the COVID first came out.
Sure.
There's always some knucklehead in Arizona with a gun who will shoot a guy with a turban even though he's a Sikh and not a terrorist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
After 9/11, that truly happened, but. I don't know, why pick on somebody who's Asian because this may have come out of a lab in Wuhan,
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody had anything to do with it. But anyway, Moonalice is very socially conscious, kind of group of people, and they have a lot of popularity without ever having really any. Well, I'm not sure if you would call. What they did have one song that I heard they got an award from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as, I don't know if that status is still true, but at the time had the most downloads.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that was a song called It's 420 Somewhere.
There you go.
Now, do they have albums out?
Yeah, they have three or four albums.
Okay.
In fact, this new one is coming out. Plus, they have a spin-off band called the Doobie Decibel System.
Yeah, with Jason Crosby.
Yeah, with Jason Crosby, who's pretty much a Moonalice
and Dead.
Yeah. Well, you gave us one of those for the museum as well.
Yeah.
So, right.
So they're all great people. I miss them, but I still feel that I can call them on the phone and talk to them if I want to, and sometimes they call me, or like the last 2 days I've gotten a call from Alex, and it's good to hear her voice too. There doesn't seem to be any rivalry amongst all the artists. There's this camaraderie rather than a rivalry, and this I miss that Wes Wilson has passed away, but he He was actually the whole father of psychedelic posters. I mean, you could call George Hunter and Ferguson with the Charlatan Seed poster, but West did probably the first 30 Avalon Ballroom and Fillmore posters, and came up with the oozing lettering,
The lava.
Yeah. He'd do a central image and then kind of do the lettering around the drawing. Or a photograph. Sometimes it was a band photo. But another great guy. I mean, when it got to be too crazy, he ended up moving to a ranch in Missouri. And some people that could find him could get, like Moonalice could get him to do artwork. His son is also a nice poster artist too.
Yeah. Wow.
Jason. And I like the fact that they're just keeping something. Here's a good example. Bill Graham made Fillmore posters because he copied Chet Helms at the Avalon. And, well, actually, I should back up a little bit. To understand those two venues, the first probably 5 or 6 concerts that Chet and the Family Dog produced were at the Fillmore. But they were rotating weekends with Bill Graham. But Bill being a businessman and Chet Helms being a hippie,
Clashed.
Well, Bill just he got up early and signed the lease, period, with the owners of the building. Eventually bought the building. But Chet then had to find another space, so he found the Avalon Ballroom. But Bill Graham copied everything that Chet did first, which was the light shows, the posters, and the 3-band concerts. It might be Procol Harum and 2 local bands, or the Doors and 2 local bands, but could even be Frost.
Yeah.
And anyway, I think the confusion between the Fillmore and the Fillmore West is there were 2 separate buildings. And when I saw, I think it was an Arthur Lee concert in more recent years before he passed away, they were playing at the original Fillmore, and he probably last remembered the Fillmore West. The Fillmore West had a previous incarnation called the Carousel Ballroom, and that was probably a dance hall from the big band era. And at some point, members of the Grateful Dead, the Jefferson Airplane, and maybe 1 or 2 other bands put on shows there. But like all things that bands want to do their own record labels and their own venues, it's work. It's not.
And they're not business people.
Yeah, it's not being a musician.
Yeah, exactly.
They get upset with the business people, but then when the day-to-day becomes drudgery, they don't want to do it anymore either. So Bill Graham took over the Carousel, and that became the Fillmore West. And, of course, by that time, he had the Fillmore East in New York. So that's why the first 4 or 5, or maybe 6 or more Family Dog posters say the Fillmore on it. And confuses people,
Sure.
because they think of the Family Dog and Chet Helms at the Avalon Ballroom, and I do too. They just got so strongly associated with those venues, and I never got anywhere close. Even though I'd done some Fillmore posters, I never got close to Bill. Not as much as David Singer. David Singer actually and Bill had a real friendship, I would say. Mm-hmm. Because Bill's a very aggressive guy. He would yell, David tells the story in the documentary called American Artifact. He tells the story about Bill Graham. And maybe this is the interview on the DVD, which is, I'm not sure if it's in the video of the final cut or not. But anyway, he tells the story of he was doing a series of collages, and he took like, a half a dozen, 10 copies of these, and he got there, and Bill was yelling on the phone, and then he turns around and says, yes, and David says, well, I was told to come down, and you might need someone like myself to do posters. And Bill actually takes them and lines them up on the back of the couch, and looks at them, and then he calls the secretary over and says, what do you think? What do you think? And he turns around and then asks David, does he do hand lettering? And David's never had, but he said yes. He went home and just practiced, because Bill liked that Wes Wilson stuff, but David is far more stylized. He has actually created fonts, with his hand lettering. In fact, there are some fonts, that are named after different psychedelic poster artists now. And
Oh, really?
yeah, but it's funny because not all of those things were original. Like Victor Moscoso used one that was called Smoke. He used it a lot, and it's actually an Art Nouveau font. And its real name was called Smoke, but now people that have digitized, the font call it Moscoso. And there's one for Singer. There's
Fillmore.
Yeah, there's
See the
Fillmore,
font.
Butterfield, Hendrix.
Yep.
And most of those are based on Wes Wilson's lettering. But even Wes Wilson, the idea came from a guy named Alfred Roller, and he was part of the Art Nouveau and what they call Viennese secessionist movement. And then he would just take a shape, and then whatever he curled into it became the letter. So like if you were doing an O, you just put a dot in the center. If you were doing an L, you might just come in with a line that suggested the shape. And Wes saw that and was impressed enough to take it to another level, which was swirling it into even more odd shapes,
Right.
It's one of the reasons I like music graphics, because it opens the door to all kinds of styles. I'm lucky that I'm versatile enough to do almost what anybody would like me to do. And I don't mean to sound like I'm bragging, but if you want a deco style cover, I can do deco. If you want Art Nouveau, I've even been asked by a Chocolate Watch Band to do a poster that looks like one of their. They wanted it to look like one of their Fillmore posters that Wes did, and I said, "Why don't you just call Wes?" And well, we can't find him, and so but they said they wanted specifically. What I did was as close to Wes as I could do, and it was for they had done one of these albums with Alex, and they were touring Europe because the album was called what was the old M&M's thing? Melts in your mouth, not
in your hand.
Not in your hands.
Yeah, and it had something to do with the watch. Oh well, I'll remember later. But I can't remember what they called the album. But it was a takeoff.
All right, it must have had something to do with your wrist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Thank you for all your art. It was so interesting to hear how you weave together these stories, the different parts of your career.
Well, they're all really, like I say, kind of related.
Yeah.
I think today you brought back around a lot of what you said at the Rock Hall of Fame downtown. You brought into today's interview because I'm like, oh, I remember you telling us that down there, which we didn't get to actually tackle last time. So
That's
it was really
right.
cool
That's
that
right.
you kind of circled that all around. And thank you for making the trek back 4 months later.
Oh, yeah. Right.
yeah, that was-
I'm glad we could do it.
It was great, Dennis, and thank you again so much for, the 17 posters that you loaned the Michigan Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame
Well, all
at the
the
Historical Museum. Man,
All the Moonalice ones I gave you, those were for you personally. I didn't know you'd frame them.
well, they were so good. We wanted to share them with everybody.
Dennis Loren, you gonna come back again and tell us some more stories?
Yeah, if
Well-
you want me.
We'll have you back next year for sure, man.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right, thanks, Dennis. It was awesome.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com. Brought to you by Michigan Rock and Roll Legends, located both inside the Bay County Historical Museum on Washington Avenue, as well as Scotty's Sandbar on Evergreen Drive at the Bay City Middle Grounds.
On behalf of the hosts, Gary, Dr. J. Johnson, Sir Fred Rife, archivist and videographer Mike Beatty, and myself, this podcast wouldn't be here without Studio 163's Alan Garcia, the voice of MMHP, Mr. Eddie Switek, all of our guests, and you, the listeners.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the 989. From all of us at the podcast, we want to thank you for tuning in.
I didn't know about the Fillmore and the Fillmore West was two different things.
Yeah.
I didn't know
We,
the Avalon became that. I had no
We,
clue.
Lazy Lester and Loaded Dice, back in the late 80s, played a blues festival, or harmonica fest out there.
Uh-huh.
And I thought on the thing it said formerly the Fillmore.
Where did you
Was it-
play?
was the-
What were they calling it now?
I'd have to look at my flyer. But
As
it
far-
was
as
it
far
was
as I
more
know.
of an audit. There wasn't a dance floor or
Well, the
anything.
current Fillmore is actually the original.
Really?
The Carousel Ballroom is now an auto dealer.
Oh, wow.
They upstairs where the concerts were is where they park or work on the cars, the mechanical section, and downstairs is the showroom.
It's not still the same building, though, is it? Did they take the
No, I don't think they. I think they just refit the building.
Okay.
I don't
Wow.
think. I don't. It looks the same from the outside to me.
All right. Well, that's nice that they,
Wow.
kept the historical building.
Yeah.
They have a plaque there or something indicating that's.
Well, no.
Musical
I
history?
mean, that because it would be maybe historically more famous as the Carousel Ballroom than the Fillmore West even. But on the posters always differentiated where the concerts were, and before he got to Fillmore West, he often, if he thought he could sell more tickets, he would what do you call it? He would book a place called Winterland, which would be like Olympia, and I mean, I thought it used to tell people that I saw the Doors, Procol Harum, and Pink Floyd all at one concert, but it was actually two weekends, and Procol Harum played both weekends. But once was with the Doors, and
Once with the other act.
it was Mount Rushmore was the other act, and then the one with Procol Harum and Pink Floyd was H.P. Lovecraft, which was a great band. I really liked them. And, they had a big hit in the summer of '67 called The White Ship. I used to at least hear it a lot on the radio. I thought it was I presume if I heard it on the radio, it was a hit,
Well, it could have been FM radio.
Yeah,
too,
it could,
That's really started out on the West Coast.
Yeah, actually, a Michigan guy
Is it Tom Donahue?
No. This is what another misconception. A guy from Detroit that was involved with the Spike Drivers, not Spike Drivers, the other band, Southbound Freeway. And his name will come to me, but he went out to San Francisco, was amongst all of the Detroiters, like, there was Jim Gurley, there was Ellen Harmon and Jack Tolley, who were part of the Family Dog. They put on the first concerts at California Hall before the more formal stuff at the Fillmore in Avalon. This was all people that hung out at the Red Dog Saloon that came back to San Francisco in the fall and wanted to keep the party going. That was the early Family Dog people.
Okay.
And two of them people were from Detroit. And then there was Mouse, of course, and myself and several others. I mean, I was always running into Detroit people.
Pete Woodman recorded with the Southbound Freeway, I think he said.
He might have. Yeah. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Because he came back from San Francisco after Donahue said he could go 24/7. See, what happened was his format, which was freeform radio, although in the beginning he called it folk rock radio, but it all became the format for FM. He'd play album cuts, he'd play whatever he wanted, basically. And that became the hippies' favorite station. Donahue was an AM jock, and he knew the FM that our friend here that I can't name for the moment had developed, and he thought if we got an FM station, we could do this 24/7. But he kind of edged him out, and then the guy came back here and I think started WABX. What is his name? Because
Yeah, I was just trying to look it up.
Did it start with a P? Podell? Or?
no. Doug Podell's much later. I know a couple of former ABX guys, but I can email you because I have the flyer. And the reason I started to get in touch with him was because I asked him if Mouse did the flyer, because it kind of is reminiscent of Mouse's style, when he's just doing a black and white flyer, not so elaborate as a poster, but that was actually done by who I'm trying to think of.
Yeah, I just called up Southbound Freeway Band, but none of the things mention the names of the guys in the group.
Mark Chover is one of them, and then there was two brothers.
There used to be a site called Motor City Archives that listed all the bands, but now it's inactive. It must have whoever was running it either stopped running it or died or whatever. Okay. But I can't find anything where it lists the group names.
So right away, I mean, there hasn't been a heavy article on a musician yet. Oh, there we go. The first one.
Yeah, you gotta. I know they were going to try to keep the irreverent.
Well, there was a guy
attitude.
who briefly bought it from Arnold, and he tried this format, this oversized format. They all started as tabloids about this size, but folded over.
Mm-hmm.
And then, this is like Life magazine.
Yeah. Well, that's the way, Rolling Stone now, the new Rolling Stone magazine is real big glossy thing. Like I subscribe to it, but I don't like it at all. It's really a lot of hip hop and pop, not the music styles that I'm really not into. So I was real disappointed in my my
Yeah,
subscription.
and
I won't
they-
be subscribing again.
Somebody owned
originally
somebody.
like every couple of weeks they were coming out.
Well, the original Rolling Stone was every 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Every
that's what
2
I
weeks,
thought.
yeah.
Yeah. Those are the old days.
Yeah, I saved them for many years. So a lot of the originals, and
I
then
did too.
I finally had to get rid of them because it just took up too much space.
Yeah, same with me. But I do have the bound. I have bound hardcovers of I think maybe the first 4 or 5 years, and that really came in handy because I had the original fake zombie stories that were in there
Nice.
that were printed in Rolling Stone.
Wow.
So it was a big help to Dennis Ralston and BuzzFeed when
This is
they did that
interesting
original
they did
article.
have a nice article on the Who.
Yeah,
Really young pictures.
I didn't realize the Who were at the Grandy so much.
Yeah,
Sounds like they were there a lot. I saw them at the East Town.
there
In
are.
fact, they
like
played
Tommy.
Tommy there for the first time.
Yeah, I saw them at the East Town do that.
I wonder if they asked Robert Crumb permission to do that.
Oh,
You know, I think they could be doing this even without Arnold's permission. But he tried to sell it several times, and nobody could make it work, and then they default and get the name again.
Right.
The last time I knew of Arnold was he was living in Las Vegas. He wanted me to come work for him because they were doing graphics for casinos. You know, they were making chips and things. Anyway, that's great.
Yeah, I thought you'd get a kick out of
Yeah,
seeing
I
that.
do. Moonalice is an interesting band because they're Pete Sears is from Jefferson Starship. Barry Sless is from Jerry Garcia Band and New Riders of the Purple Sage.
Sure.
And,
Well, you know,
yeah,
Now they got the
I'm
sisters in there or something.
I'm one of 20 artists that they hired. They have a poster for every concert they do. And
My Morning Jacket does that. Wilco does that. Government Mule does that. A lot of bands are doing that now. It's pretty cool. Jack White. Everybody's got a poster for each gig now. I kind of dig it.
oh yeah, definitely great souvenir if you go to the show.
Yep.
yeah, that's what kind of happened to posters. They become merchandise. Well, since I saw you guys, I did the Bobby Balderrama's CD package.